Time I upload, please hit the subscribe button and the bell notification.
Helping you along the way. Helping you to make it through another day. Yeah. Everything you need to know that you never knew, that you need to know. Lockhart Perspective.
Well, hello, and welcome to the Lockhart Perspective and Headlines with a Voice. Today, I am very excited about the guest that we have. We have Judge Joe Brown. Now, let me tell you a little bit. Now, we all know him from, television, one of the most famous judges on TV. We all know him, but let me tell you what sparked my interest in him about 3 years ago, and then it sort of peaked and it just kept going. And that was the fact that he was a man that really was concerned about where our nation was going. And more specifically, I'm going to say this, he was really concerned about where our community was going. And that was important to me. It was important because there were so many bad representations that were going on out there in the world that would lead people to believe that we were savages, that we were this and they were that. He, instead of complaining about it, he was speaking to the very core of the issue. He was dealing with the family. And for me, that spoke volumes. So when I found that he was running as a mayoral candidate there in Tennessee, I said, oh my gosh, I got to have him. I got to have him come because I want people to see that there are folks out here who have good, solid common sense, just very good sense. And that is exactly what I think of Judge Brown. Now, there are a couple of stories that are out there. You'll find a lot of good information about him, but I want to tell you that I'm going to read this and I'm going to leave the website down here for you guys. It says, Tennessee's very own Judge Joe Brown has shown interest in running for political office for quite some time now, but he recently announced that he would be throwing in his hat in the ring for the 2023 mayoral run in Memphis, Tennessee. Now, outside of being one of the state's first most prominent judges who presides over Memphis's busiest court, Judge Brown has had a long-standing record of advocating for Black citizens. And let me tell you why this is important. This is important because our community has been used as a pawn, in my opinion. And I've shared that with you all here. Our community has been used a pawn for everything that wants to get pushed through. If you want to push it through, use this face and it'll get through. But he's not going there. He's dealing with the very root and the very core of what is going on in the Black community right now. So I love the way that it says that he's advocating for Black citizens. And the one thing I have to tell you is that doesn't mean that he gives you a pet on the wrist or a pet on the head. He's getting right to the root. Now, I want to bring him up because I want to hear him tell everybody, as well as myself, what prompted him right now to go on ahead and get into this. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce you guys to somebody that I really, really admire, Judge Joe Brown. Judge, I want to welcome you to the show. Welcome to the show, kind sir. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, how are you?
I am wonderful. I'm wonderful. Now I've got
be of service. All right.
Well, I've got 13 or 14 grandchildren, and today we've got 3 of them here in the house. So you may hear them in the background, and my folks here are pretty used to them running around. But I want to thank you for everything that you have done for people, period. And then I want you to share with us what prompted you to run for mayor at this juncture.
Well, let's put it this way. I've always been about service. That's the way I got raised. So recently, some people came to me and said, hey, Judge, you have to run for mayor. Somebody needs to take the reins of this city and make it what it ought to be. and what it could be in a positive fashion. So I said, why not? I'll take the call. I've always been fascinated by what happens when people get the call and they try to bail on it. Usually, bad things happen when they do. So I said, I've got enough on my plate that's bad. Most of the bad stuff, at least, was adventurous and was exciting. So let's go ahead and answer the call. Now, I also have been looking at what's going on in this city of Memphis, Tennessee, and I said I can do better, a heck of a lot better. So here I am. And the slogan is JJB for mayor of Memphis, Tennessee in 2023. Send Brown downtown.
I like it. I love it. I want some more of it. Okay, that was very good. Now, I also wanted to talk to you specifically about the direction that our country is going right now. I know that you have some very good opinions about it, and I really do want to talk to you about that. What can you tell us about the most recent situation with Roe as it relates to the legality of it from its inception? Can you
You mean
share
Roe v.
anything?
Wade?
That's
All it
correct.
did was, well, not all it did. What it did was not outlaw abortion. It just said abortion is no longer protected as a constitutional right to privacy. I have a problem with some of the aspects of the decision when it comes to privacy because a lot that has to do with the Fourth Amendment and the protection that it provides the citizenry has to do with the concept of privacy. So I looked at what was written and I said, that's where I'm most concerned because I see a more dangerous fallout from any erosion to privacy rights when it comes to that. Basically, the Fourth Amendment says you have a right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure. And before anyone can violate your privacy rights, they have to get a search warrant. Now, that's what's at stake. Roe v. Wade did not, what it simply did was say this privacy right is extended by extrapolation to a woman's right to be private in her body. And what the other side did was something interesting. Most people don't get it, but it goes this way. If you can draft a young man who can be required, if necessary, to give up his life for his country, then you can certainly require the young women to give birth to replace the dead young men that died for their country. That's kind of where it ultimately goes. Now, my personal position is that's a thing you women have to resolve in your own heads. I'm not a woman, so I can't do that for you. But I understand where this is going. So good luck if you're for a woman's right to choose, and good fortune to you on the other hand if you think this was good, taking away your right to terminate a pregnancy. Now, I got deep into biology in college and have since, and I know that out of every 3 human pregnancies or conceptions, out of every 5 human pregnancies and conceptions, 3 of them naturally terminate by miscarriage or spontaneous abortion within the first 2 months. And a lot of times women don't even know that they have been. So it is what it is.
Well, you know what? I'm glad that you covered it that way. And then I also wanted to ask you with regards to the justices. There have been a lot of threats and things of that nature been made towards them just recently because of the whole overturning of Roe v. Wade. I want to talk to you a little bit about the significance of this disruption and how it's caused the there's no there has been a lot of pushback from this current administration as it relates to protecting them. Now, some would say, well, you know what? People can camp out in front of anybody's house as long as they're not bothering them. Then what's the problem? Can you touch a little bit
Oh
about what the difference
yeah,
is with the
you.
judges in this particular case, being Supreme Court
Let's not
judges?
even talk about judges. Let's talk about anybody.
Hmm.
How would you like a bunch of characters parked out in front of your house and
Not
you
at
try to
all.
get through? Yeah, well, same thing. They're still citizens.
Hmm.
And this disturbance that is supposed to have taken place January 6th, 2021, which involved about 180 people, about 25 of whom committed misdemeanor trespass and misdemeanor vandalism, that is being made so much of, that doesn't come anywhere close to what is going on here. You see, you have the First Amendment that says you have a right to assemble and petition the government for redress of grievance. And that has long been held to embrace demonstrations and protests so long as they stay orderly. And as far as accountability to disorder, that accountability rests on the individuals who are responsible for the disorder, unless someone did what, within the realm and embrace of criminal law, was specifically with intent to generate an unlawful assembly, with intent to generate a breach of the public peace, dignity, and order outside of protest. So you have to deal with this. There were several interesting things going on. The so-called disruption interfered with calling the calendar that was next to deal with the 1877 act known as Confidence in Elections Act, which is a still standing law that says when there appears to be a lack of public confidence in the outcome of the election, Congress shall appoint a 15-man or person committee, 5 from the House, 5 from the Senate, and 5 from the Supreme Court, who shall conduct an independent audit of the election results, which shall take a minimum of 10 days or longer as is reasonably necessary. That was next up. Now, that being the case, we have to look at the context of the same people that are upset by that and conducting all of these hearings that basically are just showpiece clown shows because there's no prosecution that they can implement. It would look really crazy trying to go after Trump the third time for another round of impeachment exercises and play. And the same people that are upset by this are also the ones that were encouraging week after week, night after night, of the same 180 to 250 people in multiple cities all over America burning down real property, destroying businesses, and endangering lives. And they're the same group that is smiling about, let's go camp out in the front yards of these justices and let's threaten them and try to intimidate them. So we are way out of line here in terms of hypocrisy, and the impact on the First Amendment becomes disturbing. It's beginning to look a lot like what you would see if you turn to the History Channel, Military Channel, or the Smithsonian Channel on cable and took a look at what was done in Germany, Deutschland, over Deutschland, yeah? Uh, Mid to late 1920s and early 1930s, when fascism was taking hold there. And a lot of the methodology looks the same. A lot of the circumstances look the same, just change the names around a bit and you'd have it. The National Socialist Workers' Party. Well, that's not talking about in America. That's talking about the one in Germany that had the acronym Nazi. So we have to worry about that. And I remember 55 years ago, I had a political science professor who said, she was foreign. She was a professor emeritus from her local university. And she said, America is in grave danger of becoming fascist, not from some jackboot wearing, goose stepping thugs, but as she put it, from some pink panty wearing, long haired beatniks who, in the name of a favor to you, would gladly impose the worst forms of totalitarianism. And that's what we have. Now, one of the things that I'm also very disturbed about, and that gets into what you noticed earlier about, well, I call it manhood. It's the emasculation of the country and destroying what Asiatically would be termed the yin yang balance. You know, that circle with one part of it black and the other white, and one's thick and one's thin, and they match up. Women can do this better than men, but men can do a little bit of it, and men can do this better than women, and women can do a little of it. But we've destroyed the balance, and we have, over the last half century, had a massive propaganda campaign in this country to glorify dysfunction. I won't go into how that came about, but let's just put it this way. One of the main objectives was to destroy the masculine componentry of the country. And the masculine component of the country is that which controls violence. Man, I beat him. No, man, you didn't whip him. You sucker punched him. No, man, he'd whip your behind if it was a fair fight. No hitting below the belt. Mandatory 8 count. Marquis Queensberry's rules of boxing. Go to the opposite corner when there's an 8 count. Fight fair. A lot of people killing each other. A white flag goes up, everybody stops, and there's right of parley. People talk about it and they negotiate. Flag of truce, in other words. Geneva Convention, war crimes, trials of war criminals. Fight fair, code duello. Agree, we're going to slap leather on Main Street at high noon, son. You know, this whole thing about ritualizing violence. And why is that important? Because humans, last I checked, were the most violent creatures that have ever walked this planet. We kill anything and everything, including ourselves, and most other species are at sufferance, and we have to protect them from what we can do to them if we don't control ourselves. So masculinity is not toxic. Its absence is toxic, because masculinity is imprinting on a boy that set of behavioral standards that cause him to continuously attempt to make where he lives a better, safer, more secure place filled with economic prosperity, opportunity, public peace, dignity and order, sense of purpose, morality, and ethics. And when you suppress that, what you do is you remove the control factor from the apex predator on the planet Earth. One of the things that I am most perturbed about, and toward the end of my career on the criminal bench, is this thing about glorification of emotion. So, young man, would you please explain to the court why you did this? Well, I was emotional. That is not an explanation. Why did you do this? Well, ain't that an explanation? I was emotional. No, it is not. That's not a defense, but nowadays we think it is. And I saw this back in the 60s when I was at UCLA as an undergrad. There was a group that was coming together. We had feminists that hated that they weren't men, lesbians that hated men, the what we call beta boys used to be called nerds, They hated that they weren't strong men. The gay crowd that hated that they weren't normal men. And then since the NOM was going on, you got this anti-war thing that snuck in there that said war is a man thing. War is a bad thing, man. And like what we need to do is raise the boys like the girls, man, so they don't do all this uptight stuff, man. It caused war. Well, what they were talking about was exactly the worst thing you could do, which is emotionalize the apex predator on the planet and remove the masculine controls. Well, obviously now, since you have this move afoot from the feminist side to get women in combat units, you're not ending violence or warfare when you start trying to implement an integration of the feminine side of humanity into the violent aspects instead of reserving it for extremists, like everything is hit the fan, so the ladies have to hit the walls of the castles and the fort to hold the line. But that's not the case, and you have the wrong kind of thing going on. You have an abdication of what it takes to be a man. See, women and children are resources. Men are supposed to provide and protect, and if necessary, we are expendable to protect the rest of humanity. It's kind of like what happened with the Titanic. Hey, there are not enough lifeboats. So, ma'am, you and your child can take my seat on the lifeboat and I'll drown with the ship when it goes down in this freezing water. Nowadays, I don't want to be a man. I just feel all this other thing, and it wants to wear a dress and have pronouns that just destroy the English language and syntax and stuff like that. And they want to put the dresses on. I want to get in the lifeboat. I've always been no, you're not getting in here. Because you see, the women are put on a pedestal because of what women can do for the human race. You bear the young. You are the mothers. You start the next generation on its way. Children, human children, are most susceptible to the human female until they are going on 8 years of age, when the receptivity opens up to embrace the masculine component of society. So when you start trying to destroy that, you destroy a lot of things. And one of the aspects that I notice, since I've been handling it so much over the last 50 years, is this thing where you emotionalize these boys and you get away from the masculine ritualization, acculturation, and socialization. And they start doing violence in the hood and in the hallways. And I'm sorry, this insane violence that goes on in the neighborhoods is not masculine. It's a lack of masculinity. The same violence that you see in the hallways is not masculine. It's a lack of it. Now, they had somebody recently, they were saying he was a bully. But when I looked at what they had about his background, that's not bullying. It's what you call scapegoating after being bullied. I was a playground director a long time ago at a place called Trinity Avenue Elementary School, along with the late Dr. Clifford Stewart of Los Angeles and a Dr. Ron Chappelle. Now, we used to look around and see a 7th grader who had just graduated from the elementary school. You could see him down at the end of the block. Some 8th or 9th grader smacked him across the head. He walks on the playground mad, so first thing he does is smack a 6th grader across the head, who does it a 5th grader, and he passes it down. Now, ultimately, somewhere in there, it used to be that part of becoming a man was screwing up your nerve. So even if you got beat in the end, you still busted the bully right in his mouth and you gave him a bloody lip or you hurt him. So he thought better of messing with you the next go around. Now, Bullying has always been here, but what's new is not busting the bully in his mouth. So, oh my God, we have to protect the children from bullying. It's the duty of the parents and the teachers and the police. So you get insane scenarios where you have 7 and 8-year-old kids getting taken to a police station because they had a fight on the school grounds, or getting suspended for a week for having a fight, when for most of the time humans have been here until the last 20, 25 years, 30 years, what happens is the teacher walked very slowly over there across the playground so the kids could fight it out and resolve these dominance hierarchy problems non-violently, because that's non-violent when nobody is getting permanently injured. But we don't do that. So we have these creatures who have never summoned up the personal courage and wherewithal to be scared as the devil, but punch this fool when it has to be done. And wow, I screwed up enough in me, turned it up and busted him.
Mm-hmm.
We have movies like Back to the Future.
Mm-hmm.
McFly goes back, young McFly, and he convinces his dad to stand up for himself, and the dad busts the bully in the jaw and knocks him out. When
Mm-hmm.
son gets back to the present, the bully works for dad. See, that's the way it used to be. But in
Exactly.
that scant period of time, this nonsense about everybody's supposed to feel good, entitled, and protected, and you get a mess. See, when you get the apex predator, there are some things about his nature. I don't care whether you like it or not, they are realities. And when you try to bury that reality, it doesn't go away. It gets corrupted. When you try to hide from that boy what's inside of him, that thing that 3,000 years ago, 500 years ago, 250 years ago would have made him an effective hunter or warrior. It doesn't go away. He just doesn't recognize it. He's not familiar with it. And sometimes it'll jump out and is leering at him. Hey, guess who I am that you haven't ever met or come to grips with? And then you get this insane violence in the hood and the hallway.
Wow.
So you've got a mess in what the solutions being offered are about. Is they're not solutions. They're making the problem worse because they're the cause of the damn problem. Like, oh my God, we have to get rid of these assault rifles. Well, AR doesn't stand for assault rifle. It stands for Armalite. And guess when Eugene Stoner patented that design?
When?
1952 in February. It's 70 years old. These AK-47s, Comrade General Kalashnikov, he designed it, and it was adopted in 1947, 75 years ago. Guess when these ARs went on sale? 1959.
Wow.
So in the intervening 63 years, how many years people have been using these readily available Stoner designed weapons known as Armalite 15, which became the M16 in the military? How many? It's a character problem. And by the way, they're not assault rifles, because a real assault rifle is, by definition, a machine gun. And these are not machine guns. You can buy one, but you can't buy one legally without paying the $200 check, getting a long background investigation that may take, depending upon where you happen to live and what your circumstances are, from 6 weeks to a year and a half, and paying the $200 tax. And the weapon has to be made before and in circulation before 1986. So there is a limited number of those things out there. You don't buy them in gun shows. You don't buy them in a gun shop. You don't get them sold out there between good citizens. Where the real hardware comes in is every time you smuggle in a few kilos of coke or heroin or opiates or something like that, you get a case or two of serious Kalashnikov hardware from the Middle East. Israel sells a bunch of them on the black market, and the U.S. promotes it because they need the money to fight Middle Eastern Islamic terrorism. And the same thing with what comes out of Iraq and Afghanistan and from South America. When the cocaine comes in, so do shipments of American military hardware that have been shipped down there over the decades. It comes in from South Korea. They need it to be able to deal with providing us with intelligence from North Korea. But now that they've got an indigenous company called Daewoo that produces the thing, they've been replacing all of this American equipment that's been sent over there for the last 70 some years. So it's coming back with the drugs. And the war on drugs cannot stop the import, the smuggling, of illicit drugs any more than they can stop the smuggling of real live weaponry. And there is a continuous supply of such stuff, like in Chicago, 3 boxcars loaded to the max with heavyweight weaponry going to various National Guard units and sheriff's department and state police departments. They got hijacked in the IC Railroad because there was insufficient security around there. You'll get 18-wheelers with shipments to this, that, and the other local police department all the time that get hijacked. So you get National Guardsmen getting serious hardware out of the Cosmoline and selling it under the table. And the supply sergeant hasn't looked at it in the last 17 years. And they don't even know it's gone. So what are you going to do about all of this? You can't stop it. And it's a matter of character. Ron Chappelle, Cliff Stewart, the late, my good brother. Cliff Stewart was listed for years by Black Belt magazine as probably the most dangerous human alive in North America. He taught me a lot, starting 55 years ago. I taught him how to shoot. He taught me martial arts. Been studying it for a half century. He, Ron Chappelle, Dr. Chappelle, myself, we can kill you very quickly with our bare hands. So what are you going to do when we walk in a crowded room? It's all about character. So you depend on our character to protect you and preserve you. And our character keeps us from killing you just because we got emotion. So what are you going to do about that? It's not the weapon. It's what's up here. And by the way, for a long, long time, what did they call it? The Stone Age, Paleolithic, Old Stone Age, Mesolithic, Middle Stone Age, Neolithic, New Stone Age, which went into the Copper Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age, and humans have been killing each other with all kinds of stuff for a long, long time. So John Wick, he came in and he killed 2 people with a pencil. Well, you literally can. You ram it through the ear canal and you get into the brain stem. Or you ram it through the back of the head. It's in compression. The wood will take that. It's easy enough. Ram it up somebody's nose and you get into the brain. Oh, through the corner of the eye. Good way to kill somebody. So what are you going to do? Ban pencils?
Exactly. That's what I was going to say.
One last comment.
Yes.
The Lord Mayor of London is calling for all kitchen knives to be serial numbered because in jolly old England, they've got a problem with the miscreants using kitchen knives, to commit homicides and aggravated assaults and generally causing a problem with danger,
in 2012, I actually covered that. I asked, what was the next question? I said, what is the next thing they're going to try to take? And then I did a study and showed exactly how many incidents had taken place with cutlery, as it were. And I said, so is this the next thing that we're going to do? I had visited these okay, I found that, you know what, even their police officers were not, protected. They didn't have any armory, as it were. And so I just said, well, gee whiz, if we go, we're going to continue to paint ourselves into a corner. And that's going to be a major problem. We have a great commercial, and we're going to talk about your product. We're going to run your commercial right now. We're going to come back in about 1 minute, folks. Don't go anywhere because this is just starting up. We're going to heat it up even more. And I want you guys to stay put because I want you to look at this commercial. This is a great commercial. Here you go. Here you go. Here you go. It's a great commercial. Great stuff. Great stuff. Hey everyone, it's me, Felicia, of the Lockhart Perspective and Headlines with a Voice. I want to tell you a little secret. This is what I used to do because I don't do it anymore. I would go to the store, buy the barbecue sauce, pour it inside of a bowl, put a whole bunch of different spices, a dash of brown sugar, a dash of maple, and a dash of mustard, stir it all around, and everybody would be like, oh my gosh, this is the best, this is the best. But I was exhausted after all of that, and a lot of times I couldn't remember how many dashes of what I put in it. But I don't have to do that anymore because now I just go to Judge Joe Brown's website and I order his 3-pack of bottled barbecue sauce. It is by far the best, and I do mean the best barbecue sauce I've ever eaten. And when you go to his website and you order his 3-pack, you'll see exactly what I mean. Head on over to jjbbbbq.com and order Judge Joe Brown's barbecue sauce. You'll be glad you did, and you're going to tell me about it. I know you will. Well, I had to run. I was like, let me go get my bottle. All right, so now look, you guys. This is my bottle. I bought the box with 3. And when I tell you it came to my house, I was amazed at how fast it got to the house. My husband, the kids, all of us, this will be the last barbecue sauce that I will purchase. Not this bottle, but this brand. I'm not paid to tell you guys this. I ordered it. It came. We had a delicious weekend. And I've lost some weight, but after this, I'm still working on it. But let me tell you something. His brand is full of good stuff that's good for the body. He believes in having a healthy body. He believes in all of that good stuff. And so that's why I'm telling you, this is the stuff you want to go get. If you want to get it, the link is down below in the description. Again, this is not a paid advertisement. I just believe that when people are doing good things, especially people that are just good people, that you should help them. And so that's the reason why I'm encouraging everybody to go grab one. Now,
and if you want to remember it, Judge Joe Brown, JJB Barbecue, BBQ. So it's jjbbbq.com. And may I make a suggestion? A lot of people find that it's good if you cut it by a third or a half with beer or malt vinegar. And some people even like red wine, the dry red wine. Now, if you drink and you had one of those long nights and you might have contemplated a Bloody Mary for Sunday brunch, well, instead of a Bloody Mary, get a Hot Mary, we call it. And take that sauce, thin it down a little bit, adds a generous portion of vodka, some ice, and some celery, and you've got a good stand-in for a Bloody Mary. So we'll have recipes, cookers, and we will have chicken links cooked and smoked, raw and smoked, and also hot and mild and a few other products, and it'll be on your shelves in a little bit, but get a jump on this summer and make all your friends Jay and order yourself some. I'm into providing service and selling sauce. So there you go.
And I believe it's a good sauce, you guys. I don't have to do all the stuff that I normally would do, mix a whole bunch of stuff together, and then I would forget what I did to get the flavor that I got that time and try to reduplicate it. But this, I didn't have to do anything to it at all. My husband loved it. The kids loved it. So there's that. Okay. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about this current administration. And I want to ask you, we as a nation impeached the former seated president 2 times, right? Has anything happened in your impression that will be considered an impeachable offense since last January of 2021? And if so, what?
Well, not right now, but you know, what is this old parable? Be careful what you ask for, you just might get it. Now, Article 2, Section 4 of the Constitution talks about impeachment. There are three things that you can impeach somebody for and convict them of. And that would require removal from their position as president or vice president. They're not because you don't like them. They're not because you disagree with what they did. It's for one, bribery, two, treason, and the Constitution specifically describes and defines treason and what you have to do to prove it. And the third one is either a felony or misdemeanor in office. Now, what they did with Trump is they impeached him, and you have to understand an impeachment is like an indictment. You have to prove it, and they couldn't, basically because their so-called articles of impeachment simply didn't state anything that's one of the three things you can impeach somebody for under the Constitution who occupies the presidency or the vice presidency. Really stupid and ignorant. And then they did the same thing the second time. But the second time, they set an interesting precedent. Mr. Trump was no longer president of the United States, so they wanted to impeach him and convict him for something he did in an office he no longer held. That would evoke the 12th Amendment, which has to do with the selection of president, vice president, et cetera, et cetera. Now, here's the problem. They opened the door to go after Mr. Joe Biden for what he did as a vice president. Now, if they ever stopped sitting on that laptop of that crackhead Hunter Biden, there's some interesting stuff in there. They've been playing it in Europe, but they've been suppressing it here. And there's another thing, too. The Constitution, Article 6, says, amongst other things, such treaties as have been ratified by the Senate are part of the supreme law of the land. And there are some treaties between the U.S. and Ukraine. And one of them has to do with the assistance to be provided in investigating, apprehending, detaining, and extraditing criminal elements. Now, you notice that our president has declined to go to Ukraine, but he sent the vice president over there. Well, his problem is the Ukraine has, amongst other things, a long, long indictment that openly names our president in multiple counts along with his crackhead son for committing bribery, extortion, suborning treason, and a number of other felonies that are cognizable in the United States of America. So he's got diplomatic immunity right now, but there is a nasty incident, an international incident that could occur were he to go over there. And the other thing is, yes, he's no longer vice president, but on your second round of proceedings against Mr. Trump, he was no longer president, just like Mr. Biden is no longer vice president. And then there is this little thing on C-SPAN that I happen to hear live. It's from January, about 2-some years ago, where Mr. Biden is on there and he's saying, laughingly, I guess I committed bribery and extortion when I threatened to cut off the $14 billion in loan guarantees to Ukraine if they didn't get this guy off of my son's case. So there you go. Now, let's look at the first round to show you how ridiculous this gets, and it's embarrassing to the country, to the citizens, and it's embarrassing the institution of Congress, which is the House and Senate. The House returns articles of impeachment the first go around for abusing his authority, but there's no such grounds for impeachment because abuse of authority is not a crime, it's not treason, and it's certainly not bribery. And the next point is obstructing Congress. Well, that fails on arrival because the Constitution, Article 1, says there shall be a Congress consisting of two chambers, one of which shall be the House of Representatives and the other shall be the Senate. So as soon as it arrives in the Senate, all they got to do is say, anybody in here feel like your will as the Senate was obstructed? Nope. So that's dead on arrival. So they didn't even send anything in. They were just dumb. And that reflects something else too. They took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, and they're even worse off than most judges and lawyers in America. Only 25% of lawyers and judges in America have actually read the 10 to 15 pages of the U.S. Constitution, depending upon what size booklet or pamphlet you printed it in. I mean, we study it in law school, but it's usually selected aspects of it instead of the whole thing as an integral unit. So the ignorance is appalling, and be careful what you ask for, you just might get it. So now they've got a precedent that says you can impeach somebody and try them for things that they allegedly did in an office they no longer hold. So now we have these midterms. And since for the last half century, they've been keeping these records, every time an administration has dropped below a certain approval rating, they lose control of whatever houses their party controls in Congress, Senate, or the House of Representatives. So what happens is, this is the absolute worst. There's never been a president in 50 years who's ranked as low as Biden. And interestingly enough, Kamala Harris Imhoff, Mrs. Imhoff, ranks even lower than Biden. And as fact, the next lowest, which is still above her, is Spiro Agnew, who was Vice President Tricky Dick Nixon. And Spiro Agnew actually wound up doing time in state and federal penitentiaries for his criminality. Hers aren't even as high as his. So that means it's going to be a disaster this midterm. And if they lose control of the House, which is a probability based on history, there will be an opening to return articles of impeachment against Joe Biden. And since the Senate is likely to be Republican, wow, likely a conviction, or a good possibility of a conviction. For what? Provable articles relative to what he did when he was vice president, since they set the precedent. And the other thing is under the 12th Amendment, he wouldn't be able to run for re-election. So they would have the disaster of having to ride with Kamala Harris, Imhoff. Interesting situation.
Very interesting situation. You know, I want to ask you a question.
Maybe that's why all of this January 6th nonsense, which is detract attention from this looming disaster. Oh, look, we're not the bad guys, even though we messed up horribly. Looky here, it's not us, it's them. They're worse, they're worse. No, we got you. That's like what happened with Kobe Bryant when he got in that little sexual misconduct thing in Colorado that they round up dismissing. LA Times carried a transcript of his interview with the detective. He said, look, I can give you somebody just as big as I am who's done a lot of bad stuff. Said, who? Shaq. Said, you mean your teammate Shaquille O'Neal? Yeah, him. He said, well, did any of this occur in Colorado? I don't know. Well, we're not interested. It's so they're trying to do that little lame game that so many hood rats do. They're OG, man, down with the ghost for the posse, man, you know. And then you look at the so-called coerced confession, and the cops going, "All right, sir, you have a right to be represented by an attorney. We really strongly suggest that you confer with one under the circumstances of this case." I don't want no lawyer. I just want to talk to my mama. Let me talk to my mama. I'll tell you everything you want to know. And it was Storm Daddy and Earl and Sean Down. They was the ones that was me no way.
Man, them.
Yeah, you know, and it's like, excuse me, this is this OG out in my courtroom posturing on the last recess for his thug homeboy. Yeah, man, I'm down with the cause. No, punk, you used up half a brand new box of Kleenex, the tissues, wiping the snot off your face. Fool, what's the matter with you?
You know, I wanted to ask you just to go back a little bit in talking about this because I really feel like a lot of people, like myself and maybe others, are feeling like, oh my goodness, there's got to be something we can do. Not that there's anything that we can as far as, making stuff move or moving the needle to a point to where we can see a definite change. I wanted to talk to you specifically about most recently hearing about our reserves, our petrol reserves that have been actually,
Sold to China.
they're gone to China. So
Well, let me
is
tell
that
you,
not a
that is
treasonous act?
that's not treason, but let me tell you how bad it is.
Mm-hmm.
See, they haven't put any oil in the reserves on the island of Oahu in Hawaii since before Pearl Harbor. There's enough oil there to run the American economy at 150% of its current usage for the next century if they never pump another drop. 99.9% of all domestically consumed oil is imported. Now, there's an interesting regulation that says 25% of all imported oil has to go into oil reserves. And another interesting law that says for every barrel that goes into the oil reserves, which is 25% of what's imported, the U.S. government has to subsidize the oil company involved with $5 per barrel over the market price. Now, some of this oil that's coming out of the oil reserve was not pumped last year. And by the way, that's part of this farce. They're talking about the price of oil went up. Yeah, it did. But the stuff that you have sold at the pump now is refined from stuff that came in more than a year ago at a very reduced price. And this stuff that China is getting a hold of that comes out of the American oil reserve, some of it's 55 years old, some of it's 60 years old, some of it is 70 years old when it got brought in at $7.83 a barrel, $9, $21 a barrel. And the oil that is being sold at that cost to these people is being sold at the pump, or will be in a year, as though it just got brought in. See, it's a double ripoff at American taxpayers' expense. See, Biden is a hack. I won't even belabor what I heard back in 1972 when I was an intern at a Washington, D.C. think tank. And I heard him outside of Delaware state capitol in Dover, where he was being lauded by Faubus, Stennis, Byrd, Wallace, and Eastland for being a Dixiecrat, and his disgustingly insulting remarks about Negroes being animals and needing to be in zoos and turning streets into jungles. I won't even go there. And I won't go to where he's talking about he was proud to being from a slave-holding state, Delaware, that understood the Negro. I won't go there. But he's never had a job in the private sector. Every job he's had since he got out of school has been with the government. So here's a person who has become a multimillionaire off of a government salary. It doesn't work. And then when you get into 10 million being paid to him by his son for benefits and bonuses the son got, dealing with a corporation he really wasn't qualified to be with, for favors done by his father, the vice president, then you start getting into bribery. See, bribery doesn't mean you offered a bribe necessarily, it means you took one. Now, ask yourself the question, people, this: how does somebody with a dishonorable discharge from the military within half a year get hired at a salary paying multi-million dollars a year from a corporate entity that you have no expertise to be with, but your dad is vice president in the United States, and the corporation you want to be with, whether it is dealing with Ukraine or the People's Republic of China, is getting great advantage off of what happens in the White House? Now, one of the more astonishing things that has come out with that laptop is that somehow or another this bozo crackhead Hunter has got copies of the White House tapes, which are no longer just audio like in Richard Nixon's time or in Eisenhower's time when he started the tapes to begin with. They've got video. I won't go into it, but in Europe, they had those things analyzed because it compromised their security. And some things on those tapes allegedly got some of their espionage and intelligence operatives subject to, and well, they got summarily executed. So they got a problem with it. Now, that stuff could be very interesting. Very, very interesting.
Wow. This hour has literally flown by, and I have scores of notes. I would love to have you back if that's possible. I would love
Sure,
it. Okay. And
sure.
and you and I will work on a date and time offline. But I have so many things to ask. I was going to ask you about the possibility, and just indulge me, the possibility of the 25th Amendment in this case. Is there a possibility? Anybody, anywhere? Please,
You
is this
mean, do you need
possible?
another amendment? Do you need
Well,
another amendment?
uh, anyone that you have, but I was wondering because of his
I think
mental.
we have one amendment we need,
Okay.
and that is a requirement that the body of a piece of legislation match its caption. Most
Mm,
states have some kind of either statutory rule or interpretation by their Supreme Court to that effect. In other
okay.
words, if the statute is talking about library books, you can't throw in something that has to deal with landlord tenant. If
Yes.
it's talking about one kind of crime, you can't sneak in something talking about something else.
Yes.
So let's take, for example, the Emmett Till anti-lynch bill. It doesn't have much of anything to do with lynching. There is no need at all to have an anti-lynch bill. They already have them on the books that are 100, 150 years old. Everything you need to deal with lynching is already on the books. Begin with Tuskegee Institute, not anything to do with the Tuskegee experiment, but and that wasn't an experiment, it was an observation of the downstream effects of untreated syphilis. That has nothing to do with Tuskegee Institute, but for a century, they had been doing a study on lynching. They recorded the lynchings, they researched it, and according to them, the last lynching took place in 1964. that involved these 3 civil rights workers that were lynched down here in Mississippi. It was 2 white kids and 1 black one. Even from the conversation, several hours I had on a couple of occasions with Emmett Till's late mother, and a lady that I wrote the foreword for her researched work on that, who did a lot of consultation with Emmett Till's mother and his stepfather. Emmett Till was not lynched, he was murdered. And this Emmett Till lynch bill, which is misnamed, is really weird. So it changes the definition of lynching. It doesn't require a mob. It can be one person that would be guilty of federal lynching. And federal lynching does not require a killing. It has 3 things: a killing, a kidnapping, or a beating. And the 3 categories are interesting: race, religion, or sexual orientation. So what they did with the Emmett Till lynch bill, under the disguise of, look what we Democrats are doing, don't pay attention to the rest of it, we gave you some frou-frou about protecting you from lynching, which they didn't. And we interjected sexual orientation. Religion, oh, fine, but except they're talking about a different kind of religion. Now, when we think of religious freedom, we think Jewish, we think Christian, we think Islam, we think Hinduism, we think Confucianism, Buddhism, Zen. But guess what? The last several don't even have a deity involved. It's a system of philosophy. So personally, I don't care what gays do. That's their damn business. They can get their freak on in their bedroom all they want. But when you start creating a religion, the rainbow cult, that's a different thing. And you see, they're trying to classify LGBTQ, the cult, as a form of religion, and they're trying to make it the official religion for the United States, where you go to DC and government employees are putting the banner of the religion from floor 15 down to the ground, where they paint the sidewalks rainbow, the crosswalks rainbow, and they have huge curb to curb LGBTQ/BLM. And you go to an American embassy or consulate, you see the American flag, you don't see a cross under it, you don't see a crescent and a star under it, you don't see a 6-pointed star, you don't see the multi-armed deity for Hinduism. You see a rainbow flag, which is oftentimes bigger than the American flag. And by the way, that's against American law. Now, that being the case, you have something interesting, which is the development of a cult. And then here's something that you might want to take into consideration. Just because you're anti that cult doesn't mean you're anti-gay. As somebody I know who's gay explained it to me, you know, I ran into work with a lot of gay folk in Hollywood. Some all right people and some weren't.
Yeah, I did too.
Here's
Good
what
people.
one of them said.
Mhm.
So just because you were Islamic doesn't mean you support ISIS or Al Qaeda.
Mhm.
And just because you were a Christian
Mhm.
doesn't mean you supported Jim Jones and drinking Kool-Aid at
Absolutely.
church picnics.
Absolutely.
You know, so you've got this thing that's going on, and one of the processes of this thing that's going on is the best way to get it accepted is to get rid of all cultural values, to get rid of shaming. See, guilt is something that humanity developed as part of its acculturation and socialization development.
Mhm.
If you feel guilty about something, you feel great shame about something, you engage in self-control. control.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When you get rid of shame, oh my God, we should always be free from shame. Shaming is so horrible. Well, guess what? You remove the control factor. You don't feel any shame for acting a fool, acting wrong, acting immorally, acting unethically. Then that means you need a totalitarian government to keep you in line. And then that runs into this problem with, hey, you guys, you're the same ones talking about defund the police. You're the same ones talking about you shouldn't be allowed to protect yourself. So who's going to protect you? Oh, we need to impose draconian laws that look like they're straight out of Nazi Germany, so we can be protected in our beliefs, but forget the rest of you. We get
Yeah.
an opportunity to badmouth you, but you can't say anything about us. And okay, maybe most of you might say there's something wrong with any adult walking around with his penis out on a float, or half naked on a float with children looking, or engaged in simulated sex, straight or gay. But you see, we want that because we want to get our freak on and recruit these kids. So you can't say anything about us because you'd be engaging in shaming and glorification of dysfunction is what we are doing, because we don't care. We want to destroy all of the standards because we are angry, because we feel cheated, because we can't do what you guys do. Because why can't we do it? Because we don't know, because you see, it's a
It just
never-ending
keeps going.
series of negatives. So the point is, we have to make this uncool to behave in a fashion that destroys our culture and our society. If you're black, think of it this way: you can't do anything if you don't have any men to do it. I don't care whether your glorification of femininity says the black woman can do all of this. Well, like one young black woman said to another one who was older, wanted to get on me at a conference with some schools, black students, say,
Mm-hmm.
look, lady, the judge is telling you right. You go into this neighborhood he's talking about and get to talking about this, they're going to snatch you into the first vacant, abandoned apartment up in the projects and rape you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Men have to do this, not us. So it's like we have this balance, and it doesn't do us any good when we try to destroy the balance. It doesn't do us any good when we become intolerant. And if you can push against us, when you start behaving as a political party, when you start influencing the expenditures of tax dollars and what the laws are, when you start trying to suppress the First Amendment, the Fourth, and the Fifth, then you're subject to pushback like any other political party. And Democrats, you need to get over this idea that black people belong to you. And I would offer this to anybody listening for these midterms: be independent. Make your vote cost something. Come off of the plantation. Don't have anybody depending upon you. And if they try to get you out to vote by take your booties to the poll, or everybody's got the buck dance and twerk now. What is it? Twerking for votes. And if
What was her name? It was some lady. I think, what was it, out in Ohio or somewhere? She's a
yeah,
senator.
yeah.
Oh,
And then
oh,
see, here's what's so bad
oh.
about her. If you looked at her piece of legislation that she's trying to promote,
Mm-mm.
that part in there about pleasure sex for 7 and 8 year olds ought to be taught in school. What the
Oh,
devil are you
wow.
teaching sex to 7, 8, 9 year old children of
Mm.
any kind? So she wants to be, her bill says pleasure non-reproductive pleasure sex to be taught to second, third, and fourth grade students. See, and then you twerk? Uh-uh. and see, what does shaking your gluteus have to do with your competence or fitness to hold this office? No.
Oh, it's just it's insanity. And oh my goodness, we're gonna. He's coming back. Judge, you're coming back. He's already said it. He's coming back. I want to be respectful of his time, and I don't want to.
Well, let me be respectful of yours. I'm holding you over much. So
no.
quiet.
You could, you know what? You could stay here for 3 hours. I would love it. But there's so many other things that I want to talk to you about. And I know for sure that I definitely wanted to talk about if we could remove this president under the 25th Amendment, if that's a possibility. And then I want to ask,
what I went to is, see, his senility and lack of fitness opens a very dangerous cabinet. Woodrow Wilson had a stroke. And for the last year and a half of his presidency, there were all sorts of bad things that went wrong. And essentially, I mean, I'm not being sexist about it.
Right.
His wife was playing president along with some advisors instead of the chief executive officer. Now, granted, he was a horrible racist, but that whole thing about mental health, that's a can of worms.
We probably don't want to open.
What's going to happen is we don't. That's why I said I went.
Yes.
I said we need one more amendment, not exercise.
Yeah, leave that one alone.
I think I think what's going to happen is that in these midterms, the Democratic Party is really going to pay some high cost for it. They'll lose control of the House. The Republicans will gain control of the Senate. And Mr. Biden is in serious trouble because his party set that precedent of impeachment and proceeding to Senate trial upon grounds that developed in an office that someone no longer held. So be careful what you ask for.
Be careful what you ask for. Judge Joe Brown, I thank you so very much for you being here with me today. I appreciate you. My husband will tell you that I was so excited over the whole entire weekend. I had gotten dates and times and mixed up. I had to go back and double check everything. And I'm just so elated that you were here with us today. I look forward to you coming back. I want to go ahead.
May I make a suggestion for our next topic?
Yes.
What this has done to the teaching of boys and girls 101A and B. These young people don't know how to relate to each other. Something was way wrong, and there's nothing being taught to them in school, in social media, in public gathering places, in society about how they're supposed to get along with each other, because what's being taught out there, what's being pushed, is okay for one group, but it's poison for 95% of the country because a joke. What do you see whenever you look at a human being? What do you see?
Oh, gee.
I'll be base. You see a successful screw.
It worked.
It worked. And somebody got born, somebody got raised, somebody courts, somebody has a successful
swimmer.
Screw, somebody else is born, somebody gets raised, somebody dies, etc. It's a never-ending continuum. Some people want to break that up. You see,
most assuredly.
Yeah.
Most assuredly. They do want to break it up. It doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't work. And you get a lot of unhealthiness. So one of the things is that if you tell a lie long enough and loud enough, you can get anybody to believe it, including the liar. But one of the things that is the implacable foe of the lie is the truth. So what we people who know better have to do is make it uncool to go for the lie.
Mm.
We need to teach the young folk how to get along with each other so they can have a spouse or a significant other at home that they can get
I
along with, or
agree.
at least get some idea. We ain't in fighting with each other. That's
I
not the way
agree.
it works.
I agree. I
And if,
agree. No,
see,
say
good
it.
friends, yeah, good friends have ferocious golf games and tennis matches with each other, running to Boston, playing bid whist, but you can still cooperate. They've turned this thing so instead of this old time battle between the sexes, it becomes a doggone war with no prisoners taken, and everybody's trying to destroy everybody. So we have to get around that. And in this kind of society, with modern communications, it takes from 3 weeks to a month to set a trend. So we have to set a trend. Now, let me get out of here. 2 thumbs up. Say, wait a minute. Here you go. 2 thumbs. Wait a minute. Yeah. 2 thumbs up. Wait. 2 thumbs up. There you go. 2 thumbs up. There you go.
I'm going to run your commercial again as we go out of here. And I just want to
Okay.
tell everybody, go to jjbbq.com. The link is down below in the description. I
You
bought
left out
my,
one B.
left one B. Well, I left out one
JJB,
B. JJBBQ.
BB, BBQ,
JJBBQ.
BB.
Okay.
Now,
And it's down below in the description. It's already there. Click it. Go over there. Do like I did. You'll be mad if you only buy 1 or 2 bottles. I got the box that comes with 3. Delicious. Again, this is not an advertisement. I'm not being paid for this. I just like to tell people about good stuff when I find it at a good deal. And that's what this is. Judge Joe Brown, thank you so very much for being with us. We will see you again when we will talk about the topic about the boys and the girls and what's really going on. Thank you so much, sir. We appreciate you, and we hope to see you again soon. And I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in with me. Listen, this last hour went by so fast. What I'd like for all of you to do is to go to FeliciaLockhart.com. This is actually going to be over there as well. But I want you guys to let me know if there's any questions that you may have next time. Maybe we can bring up, that as a topic as well. You guys take care of yourselves. Remember what we always say here on the Lockhart Perspective with any Felicia Lockhart Group publications, and that is that man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of the Most High. You guys take care of yourselves, and please remember to take care of one another. Now go on and look at this here. Hey everyone, it's me, Felicia, of the Lockhart Perspective and Headlines with a Voice. I want to tell you a little secret. This is what I used to do, because I don't do it anymore. I would go to the store, buy the barbecue sauce, pour it inside of a bowl, put a whole bunch of different spices, a dash of brown sugar, a dash of maple, and a dash of mustard, stir it all around, and everybody would be like, oh my gosh, this is the best, this is the best. But I was exhausted after all of that, and a lot of times I couldn't remember how many dashes of what I put in it. But I don't have to do that anymore, because now I just go to Judge Joe Brown's website and I order his 3-pack of bottled barbecue sauce. It is by far the best, and I do mean the best barbecue sauce I've ever eaten. And when you go to his website and you order his 3-pack, you'll see exactly what I mean. Head on over to jjbbq.com and order Judge Joe Brown's barbecue sauce. You'll be glad you did, and you're going to tell me about it. I know you will.